And with us to review the headlines is journalist and author Yasmin Alibhai-Brown and author and broadcaster Emma Wolfe. A very good morning to you both. Thanks for joining us. Emma, let's start with the front page of the Sunday Times. You pulled out that article about Ukrainian forces' success in that southern city of Kherson.
Yeah, this is, following on from your very interesting interview there with the former defence minister of Ukraine, and the moving footage of Kherson residents sort of welcoming their soldiers back. This is Putin's retreat transforms Kherson into a city of joy after 8 months of very brutal occupation by the Russians. Finally, these euphoric residents are celebrating. They're draped in their blue and yellow Ukrainian flags. Beautiful photograph on the front of the Times. There are signs saying Putin kaput, things like that in Freedom Square. And obviously this follows Putin's very hasty retreat on Friday, which is being billed as, one of the most humiliating defeats of his 22-year reign. It's obviously the biggest loss for him. It was the first, Kherson was the first provincial capital that they had seized, the only provincial capital that they had seized. And so this retreat, since his first since the invasion in February, represents a real blow to Putin. It's not a safe situation, though. We have to understand, and as the defence minister was explaining there, it's not a safe situation by any means. You've got Russian forces remaining just across the river, just across the Dnipro River. You've also got Russian forces who are holed up in basements, who haven't been able to leave with the rest of them. You've also got these terribly raw memories from Kherson residents about what they've been through in the past 8 months: torture, looting, terrible damage to infrastructure. So, Sally, the city is very much not back on its feet yet, but obviously this represents a real breakthrough for the residents.
Yeah, absolutely. And just extraordinary, isn't it, to hear from those residents after so many months of not being able to contact them. And certainly there are a number of people missing as well, according to our team there on the ground, who've been speaking to residents saying, people would just go out for water, for medicine, and they just wouldn't come back. So we're still obviously learning the full extent of what happened there. Yasmin, you pulled out the front page of The Observer, an image from Ukraine also featured on the front page of that, but also next to it a very interesting article about, the first time we've really had a price tag put on Liz Truss's mini budget.
Yes, and in 46 days, was it, or 44, Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng managed to sink 30 billion pounds in a kind of, I don't know what they thought they were doing, utterly unthought out, uncosted wheeze, really extraordinary, irresponsible behavior by elected politicians. But I then looked at a figure for how much Dido Harding, who was given the track and trace responsibility, what seems ages ago, that splaffed, as to use Boris Johnson's favourite word, 37 billion. Now you compare that to what nurses are asking for and how much that would cost, and you begin to ask, is it okay that you've wasted all this money and got us into this situation, and yet you're denying nurses what they absolutely have earned and deserve? This idea of the Tories always being sound on economics is now kind of totally in shreds, isn't it? And is Truss going to have to pay anything for this, or do they just write it off? Writing off Matt Hancock, all the contracts he gave to his pub mates. I want to see a proper list of how much bad decisions by the recent Tory party and government has cost us, actually. But this one really is shocking. 44 days.
Obviously, Matt Hancock is not here to defend himself. He is in the Australian jungle, as we know. But certainly £30 billion is not something you're going to find down the back of the sofa, is it, Yasmin? But that brings me on nicely to the front page of the Express, Emma, which you pulled out. It certainly seems that the Chancellor and the Prime Minister are sowing the seeds of the grim news that's going to come next week.
Absolutely, and that 30 billion is about half of the estimated 55-60 billion pound fiscal black hole that we keep hearing about. So this is Rishi revives Thatcherism to rescue the UK ahead of the much anticipated autumn statement on Thursday. Obviously, it's an absolutely crucial moment for Sunak and for his Chancellor, but also a crucial moment for the country and for the economy and for where we go with it. And, you know, call it austerity, call it Thatcherism, whatever we call it, it's going to be extremely painful. Jeremy Hunt is very much preparing the groundwork for it to be eye-wateringly painful. You know, maybe in hopes that it'll be less painful when it actually happens, when we get our popcorn out on Thursday this week. So he's been calling himself Scrooge, who's going to do things that make sure Christmas is never cancelled. He's been referring to Margaret Thatcher's very tough measures and quoting her specifically to appeal to Conservative, you know, Iron Lady fans, quoting the Iron Lady as saying, there is nothing moral about spending money you don't have. He's obviously preparing to pile misery onto the voters. There are things like stealth tax increases which are being mooted, tax hikes, deep public spending cuts to police, education, council budget. It's not going to be fun at all. And I think we're braced for a very painful economic Christmas present from the Chancellor.
And Yasmin, the front page of the Sunday Telegraph is the other major issue in the Prime Minister's in tray, this issue of immigration and Robert Jenrick, Immigration Minister, writing in the Sunday Telegraph today about the need to end what he calls Hotel Britain. Tell us more on that.
Well, you know, again, they do it over and over again, kind of misrepresent what's happening. People don't come to this country to go to the Hotel Britannia in Birmingham. People don't leave their homes and get on perilous boats. Now, I know there's a situation with Albania, and that is on the front page too, that it is felt Albanian boat people are kind of arriving here when the country is stable, their lives are not insecure, and there is an argument to be had about that. I personally think it would be fair to check the cases, and if they don't bear scrutiny, then they should go back to Albania. There might be some who genuinely have a case, but Yasmin, the others are Syrians and Iranians.
Yasmin, I'm going to have to jump in. I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Yasmin, Emma, thank you so much. We'll see you again next hour, and do stay with us because we'll have more coming up at the top of the hour on Ukraine and, of course, on Remembrance Sunday.